Hello and welcome to the Pixel Scandal Nerdcast, episode 48. I'm Kurt.
Nightson.
Handor.
Oreztes.
End of line.
End of line.
Welcome, everybody.
Yeah, welcome to our show. And tonight's spotlight topic is going to be different different genres and tropes. Words are hard. You know, what is cyberpunk, pulp, fantasy versus high fantasy, and the like. So, Endo, do we have any announcements?
Yep. We have our Pixel Scandal side quests coming up. Saturday, April 27th at 9 a.m. We have Dialect, which is going to be run by our guest GM Yoshi. Our next Dungeon World game is going to be Saturday, March 9th at 9 a.m. And then this is our last week. On Saturday at 8 p.m. We are officially moving to Sunday afternoons at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, starting on April 14th.
I want to say a correction there. March 9th is already passed. Our next Dungeon World game is April 13th.
Oh, sorry.
No, we're taking a year hiatus so that we can build hype.
But that will actually be that'll be the last Dungeon World game. That'll be the final session of our Dungeon World
Ever.
But we have plans. We have big plans.
Not just for us, but for everyone in the world.
We have a follow-up game that we're going to be moving into quickly thereafter.
Yeah.
Which we're excited about.
Well, all right. Yeah. So, moving on to what we're excited about. Wait, is this legit? Mark Hamill will voice Chucky in the new Child's Play movie?
100% legit.
No way.
Yeah.
Wow, man. Mark Hamill's getting all the...
Well, he's an amazing voice actor, so...
Yeah. Well, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Moving from the Joker to Chucky. I love it.
I'm presuming that Gidget put this, but Gidget and I would be the only two people in this cast that would probably know that. But yeah, he's totally casting.
That's cool.
That is awesome. I'm now super excited to see that. Wait, so obviously they're remaking Child's Play because I didn't hear it, but it makes sense with everything else they're doing.
Yeah, Aubrey Plaza from Parks and Rec is in it.
Really?
Oh
wow!
And apparently,
is she playing Tiffany? Is she playing the bride of Chucky?
I think she's playing the kid's mom, actually. And I think the rumor is the twist on this Chucky is that it's not going to be demonic possession; it's going to be technological
possession.
So no, it's going to to be something went terribly wrong in the AI.
Yeah. Oh my god.
Yeah. That's what I've heard. I mean, I don't know for a fact.
It's gonna be like
and that's actually. Go ahead, Handor.
I was gonna. There's also the Pet Sematary coming to Netflix, right?
Yes. No. Pet Sematary in the movies.
It's right now.
Well, it's coming to Netflix eventually.
Yeah. I you know what's funny, Handor? I was literally typing that out as you said it. I'm dragging my partner to see it with me.
Gotcha.
I'm gonna invite a couple friends too.
Yeah, I want to see it.
Apparently, it's really good.
Oh, is it already out?
Yeah, it's out.
Oh, okay. Well,
nice.
That gives an idea of how much I pay attention to what comes out in cinema.
Did they get the Ramones to do the soundtrack again? Because the original
no.
Pet Cemetery song was the best movie song ever.
Who knows, though? Honestly, it could be in there. I don't know.
So what else is everybody else excited about? What do you got?
Well, I see something else in there. Who put that in there?
Well, we skipped something. We skipped this. What is this?
PixelCon, ScandalCon.
Yeah, we don't have an official name for it. PixelCon, ScandalCon, Pixel ScandalCon. I don't know.
I wish we had call it.
We're having our first. This is our first. We've been doing this for years. I don't know how many years. It's been a lot of years. We as a group have been once a year. We kind of rent a place or go to a place out of town, and we kind of have 3 or 4 days of just gaming. We all plan games. We all play board games and our tabletop for about 2 to 3 days for a vacation. But this is the first year we've done it after we started Pixel Scandal, which was a year ago, right?
Well, no, we did Western Town last year, but
Western Town.
This is the first time that Handor gets to participate.
I was gonna say, it's funny that how you guys set up the PixelCon, ScandalCon, Pixel ScandalCon, question mark, is it sounds very similar to the opening to every scary movie you've ever seen. And then I was thinking to myself, how have you guys, managed to go so long hitting all those notes of what you're not supposed to do in a scary movie, right? And then I thought,
you realize that Endo.
Hang on.
Okay.
And then I thought to myself, what's going to be different this time? And the only thing I can manage to think of that's going to be different this time is me. So,
well, to be fair, if anything was going to be a horror movie, it would have been the Western Town one.
Yeah.
If anything terribly horrific was going to occur, that was the opportunity for it to transpire.
Yeah, it was. Go ahead, Oreztes.
I feel like Handor is approaching it from the point of view of the victim and not the point of view of the murderers, which is how we approach them.
To be fair, every year I have a game where you guys get murdered.
Yeah, that your fear is literally the plot of one of his game every year. Actually,
Pretty much.
Is that
not this last
Is that the
year.
Jenga Tower one?
Well, I don't know if I told you this, Handor, but because of work, there's no way I can finish my EverQuest tabletop yet.
Yeah.
Because it's quickly migrating from a RPG game to a board game, if I'm being completely honest. Like, it's transitioning into that.
Yeah.
Unintentionally, that's just what's happening to it. And I kind of just want to let it go in that direction if it's going to go in that direction. But instead, I'm going to run a Dread game. So you'll get to play Dread.
So that's the Jenga Tower one, right? Where
And some of my props came in today from Amazon, so I'm kind of stoked.
That's the one you guys all said it was like actually pretty freaky, right?
That was the one where Kurt raged.
Yeah,
Threw himself
that's-
down the
Kurt didn't
stairs.
rage.
I-
What was it? Rage.
He suicided.
I
He
suffered
succumbed
some
to bleed.
extreme bleed.
Emotional bleed. Go check that episode.
I definitely can't play myself in horror games. That's not a thing I can do.
And you will not be playing yourself in this one.
Awesome.
This one's going to be more fantasy horror, not
Oh,
our real horror movie
Okay.
horror.
I want real horror.
It will have horror. It just
okay.
will be more fantasy horror.
that really sounds pretty fun.
Yeah.
Gidget just brought up tomorrow is apparently our 1 year anniversary of us doing this nonsense.
Happy birthday, Pixel Scan.
Pixel
And we are-
Scandal Nerdcast 1 year anniversary.
And with us at episode 48, that means we missed less than 5 episodes in the whole year. I'm
Not bad.
actually amazed
Yeah.
at us for that.
Yeah,
I'm amazed at us. Pixel Scandal is amazing.
We were less diligent in those early episodes because we still hadn't decided if this was actually like a thing we were gonna go hard into. It was sort of
we
an
went
experiment in the early
We
days.
went
like to-
so hard.
Phrasing.
We like
I
to
mean,
get
we
real
were
hard to go
but
in.
I don't know if we were
like to
gonna
get
go
hard and go
hard.
in, you know.
That's one, Kurt. That's one.
That's one. That is one.
Gidget's not in the room for 8 minutes, and this is
And
what
it's
you
dick jokes. It's all dick jokes.
All the way
There's no
down.
use,
All
it's
the way
dicks
down.
all the way down.
Dick jokes all the way down.
Okay, she makes as many dick jokes as we do. I'm just putting that out there.
But not on stream.
Yeah.
Maybe
well,
okay.
true.
Well, maybe not, but
We need to start recording.
Let's
We need
keep
to
it
start
real
recording
here.
early, and then just have all Gidget saying like dick shit like the whole time. Just do like a whole 30-second clip of her saying dick stuff.
All right, and then the last thing we got here is Endgame, which is coming or is very fast approaching.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, it feels like we're obligated to be excited about it at this point, right? Like it's the culmination of 10 years worth of build up in a cinematic universe.
It hasn't ever been done, and it'll probably be a long time before it's able to be done again.
Yeah.
And it is probably, at least in my opinion, the most amazing saga of the Marvel history. Infinity Gauntlet, I should say, has always been, in my heart, the strongest storyline they've ever done in Marvel.
Mhm.
So yeah, of course I'm excited to see it.
I don't really feel like I'm obligated to be excited about it. I feel like I'm obligated to be excited about the next World of Warcraft expansion.
I'm going to agree. I don't feel I'm obligated. I feel like I'm genuinely excited.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
genuinely excited.
Well, and it's funny because I finally Gidget and I finally went and saw Captain Marvel, and and so that got me right back, pulled me right back in, right? And then of course
Wasn't
the
it
thing comes
fun?
up.
It was
It was just a fun movie. I'm not
And-
saying it was mind-blowingly the best movie ever, but
No.
it was a fun freaking
It was
ride.
it was kind of like, it felt weird for the first half of the movie because I'm like, I don't really know Captain Marvel that well aside from she gave Rogue her powers.
Well,
And so I'm watching the movie and I'm like, this seems off and it's weird. And then the literal switch that gets turned
Yeah.
in the climax of the movie, and the tone of the movie completely shifts. You're like,
Yeah.
this is so much fun. This is so much awesome.
It cranks to
Yeah.
11 like in
Yes.
a snap.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, and you really start feeling like this overwhelming like almost excitement for the character of Captain Marvel as it comes to life. You really feel that in this movie. I think that's what they've really done well.
Her personality too, and I was thinking about this a couple of days ago, but it felt like her personality and her attitude fits in the MCU too.
oh
yeah, for sure.
definitely. It was a really fun movie, and I swear to God that playlist was right out of my goddamn.
Mhm.
Oh,
Winamp.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
I walked out of that
So
movie
good.
saying the soundtrack was the best part. It was a good movie, but the soundtrack was
That
like,
soundtrack. Oh my God. I mean, seriously, if you had gone to 15-year-old Kurt's computer, opened Winamp, it would have just been those songs. Like that's what you
Winamp,
got.
yep.
Can
My-
like
I just want to
Go
spend
ahead,
a moment to say thank you, Napster, for all you did for us.
Oh,
yeah.
Thanks
So-
for introducing me to Rockabilly Napster.
Very bad.
Are we ever gonna have like a quick discussion about the possibilities or a hypothesis of what's gonna happen with Deadpool and what is it, Warner Brothers having bought?
Deadpool is in the
Now that
Avengers.
Deadpool's
It's
a
confirmed.
Disney princess?
Yeah.
Well,
What's-
they've already officially announced there is a Deadpool 3 movie.
yeah. The stance they took right now is Deadpool's still a thing. X-Men is still a thing. But they're making it very clear that any of the R-rated properties that they brought along with Fox are in their own separate bucket, and when they do marketing, they will make it very clear that this is not Marvel, or like this is not the MCU kind of thing.
Yeah.
They
Okay.
canceled actually a lot of planned movies, but they actually did not cancel. They actually are going with Deadpool 3. Which kind of surprised me given some of the things they canceled. And I can't remember offhand what they were, but some of them were pretty interesting.
Well, to be fair, they're coming out with some real shit. So, and at the same time, Deadpool was a big box office winner.
Are they keeping New Mutants?
So, New Mutants apparently was supposed to do reshoots, and they never did them.
so it just died?
What's her name from Game of Thrones? What's her name?
Maisie
Maisie
Williams.
Williams.
Maisie Williams
Arya
apparently
Stark?
leaked that they were supposed to do a ton of reshoots on the movie because it lacked the tone and they didn't have the right like pacing or whatever. They never did them, so no one knows if it's ever going to get released or not.
Gotcha.
It's
Damn.
apparently on a shelf somewhere.
Because I was
So
super
we don't
excited
know.
about that, not necessarily because I like the story was a favorite of mine or anything. I just like seeing this world, this universe with different tones, different
Yeah.
genres put on it.
Yeah.
It's never been done before.
You know, we got our buddy cop movie in Ragnarok, and
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So
But yeah, I
which-
don't know.
Which Quicksilver is the official canon Quicksilver?
God, who knows?
Ooh.
Can it be the cool one with the long hair from the X-Men movies? Because he's so much better than the one from the Avengers.
well, the canon MCU one is dead. So
Yeah, they killed him. So, spoiler, I guess.
8-year-old movie spoiler.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. When did Ultron come out? It doesn't matter. But yeah, I definitely think the Quicksilver from X-Men should be the
Yeah.
canon one. That he's way cooler. But okay, well,
So moving on. Yeah, I think we've sputtered about that enough. Let's go on to what we played recently. Apparently, you were playing some D&D.
yeah, I got
Loser.
to play Dungeons and Dragons this morning. You know what? It's funny because I talk critically about Dungeons and Dragons a lot, but I really enjoy playing D&D. Like I really just like the world of D&D.
I think D&D unapologetically is what it is.
Yeah.
And what it is it like for being a combat simulator, for being here's some cool things, just power fantasy. It does it really well.
Yeah, it is a fun thing to do. I don't know that the system does all the things people try to make it do, but when you try to do the thing that the system was built to do, it does it well. So
yeah, kill some monsters, steal their loot, level up.
Yeah.
Build your
pretend
character.
you're in a cartoon, right? Just play it like a cartoon and you're good. But yeah, so I got to play. Christopher Gray is running a D&D campaign with Jason Mills, Abria from Happy Jacks, and myself, and Gene, who's a friend of the show. We're all in this game, but and we were supposed to stream it today. However, we had some technical difficulties because this is not on Pixel Scandal. This is on another stream, and so there was some issues getting everything set up. So we recorded the game, and then we should hopefully be good to stream the next one. But yeah, it was fun to play. It was a cool game. I really like the players. I'm super excited. Chris is a hilarious GM, so I'm looking forward to it. It's a every other week game, so yeah.
We should have switched
really
over
good.
to. Sorry, we should have switched over to.
Well, that was
The,
me too, actually. Discord died for a second for us too.
Oh, okay. Because I'm getting really bad. But anyways, we can. Go on.
We'll take a look at it in the intermission.
Yeah.
Because
we have those.
So it was really fun, and I'm super looking forward to our next game, because we ended on a cliffhanger of, and you enter the room and see all the vampires. See you guys next week.
Wow.
So
Charisma cleric, go.
yeah, right. I'm actually playing the Unearthed Arcana Artificer, who I don't think would fit what Nightson likes about artificers, but it is a weird, interesting class, and I'm excited to check it out.
Does it go?
You know
A
what?
lot?
It does have hand crossbow proficiency, but I actually took
Beautiful.
I took a level of rogue so I could play it as a frontline fighter.
Repeating crossbow.
Probably.
Oh my God,
Probably
yeah.
Twilight vampires.
Blake, that was our exact question. Two of us at the same Jason and myself both go, "Do they sparkle?" when he said that, like immediately.
Yeah,
No.
And you sees vampires is a very different statement now than it was. Very open-ended statement nowadays. What kind of vampires are we talking about?
Yeah.
Well, what
Bram
kind of
Stoker or
vampires? Just like a depressed Brad Pitt. Like, what do we got?
This is the Lost Boys with glitter blood.
It's got Dresden
there's
vampires.
one.
What quarter are they from?
Yeah, right. There's so many. So who's been playing Grim Dawn?
I have been playing Grim Dawn. I've been playing for the last week. A buddy of mine have been kind of trying to play it for on and off for like the last year or so, maybe longer. And every time we pick it up, we play it for a little while, and then we end up going back to Path of Exile. But this time we pushed through. We got through the entire campaign. We got through the entire first expansion. And now we're going to be just now starting on the second expansion, and we've had a blast with it. Been a lot of fun. Good storyline. Characters we're playing are interesting. Highly suggest at least a solo player or co-op just going through the campaign. It's been a lot of fun.
nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I know Gidget and I were looking at it, and it was on sale, and then I didn't grab it. I don't know if it's still on sale, because we were going to try to co-op it, or actually we were planning on joining you, and then we got super busy that weekend, and so
You guys were
think-
big into Diablo, weren't you?
Huh?
Yeah, they played a lot of Diablo.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
and
we would
Gidge
play
were big
Diablo
at
together.
Diablo.
I almost think you guys would maybe enjoy Torchlight 2 better.
Really, Grim Dawn seems
Yeah, I mean, that's
pretty
an amazing
grim.
game.
I mean,
No, Torchlight's not grim.
no, I was
It's
saying Grim Dawn
cartoony.
is pretty grim.
Oh, Grim Dawn is grim. It's very,
Grim and Dawn.
Yeah.
it's grim. And there is Dawn again.
All right, and then beyond that, we have been continue playing Division because we are suckers for playing the new hotness, as it
The
were.
new hotness.
Looping out a shooter.
Yeah. Well, I will say that regardless of
Division
any
dose.
other complaints, the fact that they literally toss loot at you alleviates a lot of the issues of it's not all great gear.
Yeah. Well, I mean, especially now since this new patch.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they're making some weird design choices with the new patch.
Mhm.
Things that you'd think that they would know better. Having already done this.
Yeah.
How many of you guys have discovered the new little bug of every time you kill an enemy, they're just like this?
The T
Yeah.
posing, yeah.
My favorite thing is whenever I'm like in town or whenever I'm back in base in DC headquarters, like selling crap, and then uh, Nightson and Endo go to like the next bounty or something, and they start on that, and I fast travel to them, and I zone in, and for about 2 seconds, I'm just surrounded by dudes, and I'm like, oh crap, what's going on? And then they
And
all
they
just
all
fall
fall
over
over.
dead. And it's
Yeah.
like, oh yeah,
That's a
what I
feature,
like.
not a bug.
Yeah,
That makes that that is the ultimate power fantasy. It's
That is
like
the power of my
I
mind.
showed up and my mere presence just made all these guys collapse.
Yeah, there's been a lot of bugs. You've been getting like control stuck on walls a lot
Mhm.
more.
Yeah.
The T posing of the enemies where they don't fall down, and then
Yep.
the variable
No,
loot is,
no special weapon loot.
no
Ammo,
special ammos
yeah.
dropping. I wholly know that they'll get this fixed by Tuesday, and it'll be fine. The variable loot is the big question mark because it was a design
Yeah.
choice, not a bug.
Yeah. In
That's-
fact, they've
We'll have to see.
even admitted that that is a design, like the community manager mentioned during one of the streams.
Yeah,
But-
I don't know. I think they implemented it wrong because they've spent the game's been out for 3 weeks. The last 3 weeks has just been all right. Everything's at 450. Everything that drops is 450, and now they're like, oh yeah, we're gonna make your your stuff vary in item level between 493 and 500, and it's like that's shitty. I don't like that.
I think they better have that sorted one way or another by the time the raid comes out, because if you start getting raid drops and they're not even capable of being
Mhm.
of max rolls, people will leave and
Oh, yeah, for sure.
fast.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
But aside from that, it's fun.
we're having fun though. We're
Yeah.
enjoying it, despite it.
So
Yeah.
do you think it's going to hold your attention for a while? Like, I mean, with this
Oh,
raid
yeah.
coming up and stuff like that, are you?
I think this will be a game that we play in bursts.
yeah,
I think it'll be a game that we'll play hard for like a week, maybe a second week.
Hard.
Then we'll taper off, and then we'll probably not play it for a while. And then a content patch will hit. They'll release an advanced class, tune some things. We'll come back. We'll play it for a weekend or two or a week. But this kind of game kind of suits that playstyle. Like it's kind of made for that sort of thing.
Well, it's not a
once you
sub
get-
game either, right?
yeah.
No,
Nope.
it's you buy to play, and a lot of us, I think most of us got the season pass for it too. So we're just gonna get the content as it comes out.
I was really impressed with them. They have a stance of the first year, all DLC content is free. Season pass gets it a week earlier, 5 days earlier, whatever. And I think that is a really bold strategy, and I hope it pays off, and I hope to see more of it, because
It's
it
a really
divides
good
your
way to
community.
and it's a really good way to combat the games aren't released finished anymore thing, where it's like, why would I pay this much for this game? It's not done. Like, you're going to get those updates for the purchase price, like it's included in what you paid for already.
Yeah.
But between that and everything else, like I happily just went and dropped and bought the season pass anyways. I don't care about the extra 5 days. I would have been fine waiting, but I want to support this style of development.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty cool.
All right. So with that said, let's move on to our spotlight topic. Tonight we're going to be discussing genres and tropes in games, movies, media, books, or RPGs or video games, and kind of discuss some of the differences between them, some of our maybe differing opinions of what the differences between them are, and maybe just kind of explaining for those who don't know what some of these terms mean. So the first one is, you know what? I'm not going to start with this one because I have a feeling Kurt's going to go off for
let's
the
put that one
remainder
last.
of the show.
Yeah,
So
let's
I'm going to put that
one
at the end.
Well,
I
I was
and I think Discord is imploding.
Yeah, we just had a lag
I,
spike there. Hang on.
Hold 1 second. I'm going to switch servers for.
Yeah, let's try that.
Yeah.
Oh, it's all broken.
How
We're
about
all
now?
dead.
Give us a second here, folks.
There we go. We're
good.
moved over to a different server now.
Okay, cool. That should hopefully fix some
All
things. I'm getting some lag on my end as well. Like OBS is actually dropping a few frames here and there. So, but
Okay.
hang with us there, chat. And if you start noticing a big issue, shout out in
Just
chat
let
as
us
well.
know.
Yeah.
All right. So I guess the first topic we could discuss is science fiction versus science fantasy.
Well, something before we dig too deep into like specific genres,
Sure.
do we want to kind of jump in and sort of lay out like what we mean by genres and or tropes and
Go for it.
Like some example ones. So, some example genres that we're talking about here are things like pulp, fantasy, high fantasy, Victorian steampunk, science fantasy, science fiction. These are the sort of genre is the oh man, how do you define genre? Someone know how to? I feel like I should have had that down.
The themes and ideas that kind of lend credence to a concept.
Yeah, a category of artistic expression. Thanks, Google.
Yeah.
But so a lot of films, a lot of games, they all sort of sit inside these genres. Sometimes they push against the edges of those genres and sort of try to push out of the genre that they're expected to be in. Other times they embrace it. Other times they make fun of it. But we're gonna kind of dig into like what those genres are, like what actually defines them, and what what the differences are between them. So science fiction versus science fantasy.
I just want to say, genre is subjective to a degree until you like hit a wall where you're very clearly crossing over into something else. But it's a very subjective thing as well.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
sure. And
I
a
think
lot of these
they're-
can kind of be one of a couple of things at the same time, or
Like high
Yeah,
fantasy versus fantasy. I mean,
If you're going to talk about music genres, where people start getting into classifications like, Southwestern grunge, Baptist, indie pop, that's probably something that exists.
Yeah, there's one band who does that.
So Blake, as the classic question of Star Trek versus Star Wars on science fiction versus science fantasy, I actually call Star Wars basically fantasy in space. I wouldn't even call it science fantasy at all.
yeah. There's a space opera, right? Is another term for that sort of like high adventure in space sort of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's basically a samurai story. Like
Yeah.
it
Okay,
takes
you
it
lost me
takes a
there.
lot of inspiration from old samurai films.
With
you talking about
magic.
Star Wars?
Yeah.
Yeah, Star Wars.
Oh, okay. I thought
Star
I heard
Wars,
Star
sorry.
Trek.
Well,
Whereas Star Trek kind of floats between the two depending on which version you're seeing and even which episode. They can
Yeah.
be either science fiction or science fantasy.
Or
One
soap
way
opera.
or soap opera. But one way I always heard it described is science fiction is things as they could be, whereas science fantasy is a story that requires this form of tech to exist.
yeah.
Like,
Kind of
you
more
could-
like, I think what you would want is something more like Firefly, I think, for your science fantasy.
I mean, I don't. Yeah, I guess because they have like, oh, we're losing frames here. Because they have like psychics and stuff like that, and sort of basically adepts in that show.
But
it's-
90% of the show is science fiction.
yeah. I think one of the I agree with Nightson. If you require a conceit for this thing to exist, like, oh well, we discovered X, right, and that allows us to, like, we're using it scientifically, but we discovered this weird thing, this unobtainium, right, or these dilithium crystals, to get as a way to explain away something that doesn't make sense, like the
Like your
replicator in
midichlorians.
Star Trek and the transporter are feel very science fantasy, right? That those feel super science fantasy to me.
Oh, I would entirely agree, Blake, that Aliens is a very sci-fi.
Oh yeah.
Assuming that the core conceit of Aliens is acceptable as science fiction.
Mhm.
That there are aliens.
Yeah, that there are aliens. I lost my train of thought.
That's okay. I think the big difference is science fiction, like you said, is something that could potentially happen, right? It's the what could versus science
But it's a
fantasy.
reasonable assumption that we could.
Right. Like the math works, but we just couldn't do it right with our current thing with current technology. Versus science fantasy is a lot more.
We
there's
may
probably
just have
weirds.
died.
Oh, did we implode?
We're back on.
Okay. Yeah, we're
Okay.
I'm dropping frames over here. I don't know if it's like my internet is trying to explode or what.
I think it's everyone's internet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The internet is dying.
Yep.
Comcast
let's
is
all
having
say-
a problem.
Let's all say a sonnet for our love of the internet and how we will miss it. One classical thing that is representative of this is time travel.
Yeah.
Time travel is very clearly science fantasy. It always requires some magical device to accomplish it. And
There's always some weird guy folding a paper and punching a pin through it.
Yeah.
I would say to me the main difference between science fiction and science fantasy is what powers your technology. Is it just straight up technology, or is it powered by magic? If there's magic involved, it's science fantasy. Just science technology, it's science fiction.
Right. And you may not call it magic, but like the TARDIS is magic, right? Like it's an extra dimensional space.
This is definitely science fantasy because the Force is magic.
So if I use a teleporting
No.
device, but I use a Duracell battery, it's suddenly science fiction.
Yeah.
His rules don't have to be consistent to anyone but him. That's the important thing.
Just saying. Hold on. It requires a triple D.
Yeah.
The battery's upside down.
Is that one of those? Is that triple D? Is that one of those square ones that you used to like? You'd get for those.
There's no triple D battery that I'm aware of. But I don't know.
What's
Well, I
what's
know what
the
you're
big-
talking about. The it's like this.
It's got
tall-
the two spring
Yeah.
connections.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the thing
It's
that
like a
powers
12
your mom's
volt.
Hitachi.
Yeah, it's,
Yeah. It's the size
I
of a
don't know if it's-
shoebox.
yeah, they're massive.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
All right. So moving on. We have here fantasy versus high fantasy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't even know what the fuck high fantasy is.
So I think
Well-
so go ahead.
When you hit level 9 and you're able to cast 5th level spells,
I
that's high fantasy.
thought it had
Is
something to do with 420.
That never naturally happens in a campaign.
So,
Is that why?
An example of high fantasy would be Lord of the Rings, right? There are elves. It's like epic stories. There's like legit magic explicitly exists. Whereas stories like maybe Game of Thrones, where it's medieval and sure there's magic, but most people don't understand or
splash.
believe in it. Yeah, it's like a splash of magic. Yeah, there's some weird creatures, but they're sort of usually far away or inaccessible until later. But
Spoilers.
that would be
Ninth level.
the like low fantasy, right? Or fantasy.
Oh,
High
that's
fantasy
low.
is like
Game of Thrones would be low fantasy.
I would call it low fantasy. Like it's
Yeah.
super rare that magic happens, right?
Even though
Like-
the one
I don't know.
blood lady with like the exquisite breasts who
Melisande.
I think with
Is that
the
who it
magic
is?
and the dragons and whatnot, I would think that that's more fantasy. I would think of
I
low
would say where they
fantasy as-
started, at least for the
Yeah.
first like 5 or 6 seasons. They were definitely low fantasy. Then they
And it
decided
starts
to kick it up a notch. Yeah,
Khaleesi walks through fire.
that's
Yeah, but
that's
that's
not
just like
weird. Like just
I would say that in and of itself is definitely low fantasy. Like just
yeah.
Oh, okay.
being immune to a thing as a plot
Okay.
element is super low fantasy in my opinion.
All right, yeah.
Now, like dragons flying around, that gets and like hordes of zombies, right?
Harry
Hordes
Potter is high fantasy.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah.
What do you mean? Sure.
Or well, it's
Yeah, it is.
Is this
It's
also
very
is
clearly-
this also
Overwhelming, it's
subjective?
overwhelmingly fantasy.
it is high
this-
magic.
It has at its central core.
I would say Harry Potter is cyberpunk.
I don't know.
I would
That's
say
not-
that.
Don't
Nobody
stir-
would agree
don't-
with me.
Don't
Once
say
again,
that.
it only requires to be internally consistent to him.
Yeah. So
For
Harry
statements
Potter.
made.
Harry Potter definitely has like explicit magic. It has like a lot of magic. There's magic everywhere, except it's not a very like the way society functions. Like high fantasy to me says, like
The whole
ancient
world.
stories, right? The whole world is this fantasy place. I would say Harry
Okay.
Potter fits into modern fantasy.
It does.
Holy shit!
because all of those fantasy tropes are laid on top of a real world.
man. Right. Well, and that stuff only exists inside of a specific place, whereas there's this other real world that we know exists that Harry Potter comes from.
Mhm.
Yeah, I get it. Okay, but okay, so sure.
Yeah, the only difference between like high fantasy and modern fantasy would be the time frame. Like high fantasy would probably be in the distant past or distant future, right? Where
Yeah.
the world we know today does not exist, and probably there are other species of humanoids running around, like elves or dwarves or whatever.
Yet everyone somehow speaks
So-
in a British accent.
High fantasy. High fantasy would be that the movie that they did that was real good. The
Right.
blue people.
Yes.
The blue people.
No.
Avatar.
Avatar.
Actually,
no,
you
that
know-
would just be a bad movie.
It's I would say that Avatar was definitely a fantasy movie. I mean, it was a science fantasy movie, right? Like it was set in a far future, but the culture that they find, like they could kind of do some weird magic stuff with that tree, and so I mean, I don't know. It's that gets iffy, where how
Jeez,
you
a
define.
piece, man.
That's
Why
what
did
I'm
we do
saying. It's
genres?
subjective. No two people will give the exact same examples. I think Lord of the Rings is probably the one that gets thrown around the most as far as like high fantasy.
as high
But-
fantasy, yeah.
Yeah,
I
but
think
there's
scale
lots of.
plays into it.
Right.
What's that show? What's the show where the characters have their brains erased and they get new personalities and people rent them? It was Joss Whedon's show,
Dollhouse?
Dollhouse. Like Dollhouse is an example. That is fantasy, but that's like low fantasy. That's modern fantasy. Like there's technology in there that we can't do, but it's completely overlaid on an existence of the real world.
What would you
But
call?
it's still fantasy.
What would you call
Science
carbon? Altered carbon.
Altered Carbon is cyberpunk.
So that's cyberpunk.
Yeah,
Dystopian universe. There's a power shift between different aspects of society.
Oh, sorry,
Like,
didn't mean to bring that up too soon.
No, that's totally cyberpunk.
Yeah, no. So that's a good question of like when you get into as soon as you get out of like fantasy, typically is in the past, right? Like it's this like medieval Arthurian stories, right? Those kind of things, Merlin and shit. And then you get into modern
Merlin
day.
and shit.
Yeah, Merlin and shit. And then as you progress through time, a lot of time periods sort of has genres associated with them. So like Victorian is just about Victorian England, or things that like reference that culture or that fashion, that style of story. So like things like The Crown and anything that has to do with Victorian England. And then Hunger Games is dystopian fantasy. Yeah, I definitely
Games is-
agree.
Hunger Games is post-apocalyptic.
There is an enormous amount of technology that is kind of not spoken to directly, but you kind of are aware of in the story. Like,
I mean, I don't know that it's cyberpunk, but it's definitely punk. Like they join a rebel cause. Like it's definitely a dystopian future. Hunger Games could fit into cyberpunk, but it doesn't have.
like think of what they
doesn't have a-
accomplish inside of with the traps and the actual arena and everything like that. That is extremely. That's definitely some sci-fi.
It's got a
cyber
lot of that sci-fi future tech, but it doesn't have a lot of the. I don't know. It doesn't have a lot of the things that cyberpunk tends to rely on, which is
Yeah.
sort of like infiltration and but then again, it
I wouldn't
does.
say.
Like, you know, it could fit. I mean, if you could make the case that Hunger Games is cyberpunk.
What's
I do agree. I think dystopian fantasy is probably a more accurate fit. But yeah,
the movie?
it has some trapping.
It's like
What do you
how do I even describe it? Well, it's the
Who's in
movie
it?
with Shailene Woodley.
No idea.
Nobody
Let me
knows
go-
who that is.
Let me go to the Google machine while somebody
Yeah,
explains
yeah,
steampunk.
There's three. I think there's three movies of it. But look up
Maze
Shailene
Runner.
Woodley. No, it's not Maze Runner. It starts with
Oh,
like
you're talking about Divergent.
Divergent.
No.
Yeah, what is that then?
I mean, Divergent is pretty. It's definitely got the punk side, right? Like they're fighting against an oppressive government.
Yep.
It's far future.
Right?
I don't know. I mean, it does a lot of the cyberpunk stuff.
Okay.
I don't know that there's sort of an aesthetic in cyberpunk that's sort of assumed is that Neo Tokyo, right? That like Orientalism, everything is super crowded, and Divergent
Technology
and
is
a lot of-
highly integrated into society. As
yeah, people are sort of oppressed by the systems that are laid over top of them. A lot of the things like Divergent and Hunger Games, they kind of jump to the dystopian end of those civilizations. Like, what would happen if you know, Neo Tokyo falls and now there's this tiny little group that's still trying to function. So it ends up in that like dystopian. I don't know what you call it. It's almost post-apocalyptic, right? Except
and
that
the technology are integrated into the story, but they're not a main like infrastructure for the
Right.
story. It's in existence in the story, but not like constructed around it.
I would say
Whereas
that a lot of
cyberpunk,
those-
technology is fully integrated into the entire world, and it touches every aspect of the world to some degree or another.
I mean, a lot of those just fit with science fiction. Like they're a
Mhm.
dystopian story, but they're just science fiction, right? Like here's what could happen if X continued.
X
Which is-
gonna give it to you.
Wow.
Which is basically what science fiction is, right? It's change one thing about real life and then see what the logical conclusion of that change would be.
Hmm.
So, I think a lot of those fit in there.
Yeah.
Are there any other things any other genres we want to touch on before I complain about
Well,
20 minutes?
well, we're kind of already on cyberpunk, so I kind of just want to roll with it, and we'll cut back to Gidgets before we leave, or before she stabs us.
Well, so we can yeah, that's true. Okay, so so the thing that bugs me about punk as a buzzword for aesthetic, it's funny. I actually just got in a conversation about this in a Discord earlier with Cecil, but it's always sort of bugged me when people just use punk as a way to say this thing as a fashion statement, right? Like steampunk, diesel punk. They're basically just saying the clothing of the time is being worn as an aesthetic. Add punk to the end to say that's what's happening.
Well,
And
I'll let you go, and then.
so the thing that bugs me about that is the punk of cyberpunk is you are fighting against an oppressive government. Like you are the low person, you are the oppressed, and you are trying to fight back and remove these systems that are oppressing you. That's the punk part of cyberpunk, right? It's not like cyberpunk. The punk part shouldn't be, and there's wires in my face. Like that shouldn't be the punk part of cyberpunk. It should be that you're fighting against this oppressive regime or these systems that are keeping you down. And so the fact that it just sort of gets tacked on as a way of saying, well, it's wires, but in your clothes, like that bugs me.
Okay, so
So hang on. So School of Rock would be punk, like cyberpunk.
What?
School of
No,
Rock.
not punk music.
I wasn't
I'm
even
pretty
punk,
sure
I
that
was
Jack
rock.
Black is a Decker.
That's right. I did call the Misfits Halloween punk earlier.
So the big thing, like I realize you're getting stuck on the punk word of cyberpunk, but cyberpunk as a term itself really kind of references taking a form of technology, and that's how it's being used in the steampunk or diesel punk, atomic punk, and it's taking a technology and a culture and not aging it, but allowing it to become like giving it 50 years of creative ideas to that technology, but not moving past it.
Right.
And the culture the same way, not adjusting, but continuing. And so that's there when they use diesel punk or anything like that, they're not saying punk. It's just a moniker to associate it with the same term as cyberpunk, which is taking the concept of information, which we have today, and putting that to 11, where information and the digital age is applied to every aspect of your life. Now, logically, that I could definitely see how that ends in a dystopian future, where all information is held and used, therefore, against you. But it's the same concept of taking some form of technology, like steampunk is the steam engine, and just seeing where that goes from there. If someone had the creativity to take those ideas and not come up with a completely better idea, but take those simple concepts and build upon them.
There's a movie I just tried watching recently, and I couldn't sit through it. And I would say it is exactly what you're describing right now. It's the movie where they live in the houses that can pack up and run away. What was
that is a steampunk movie? Yes.
Yeah. What's that called?
I didn't.
Castle.
It's Mortal Instruments or Immortal Instruments.
Mortal Instrument. Yeah.
I didn't see it, but I'm aware of it.
I tried watching it, man, but I don't know. I'll tell you what, I couldn't. I shut it off. It's the first time I've ever rented a movie. Look, I sat all the way through Zambeavers or whatever that's called. We're talking about like a Netflix movie, okay? And I sat through that, okay? I could not sit through this movie.
Yeah.
I saw that in the theater. It actually, I mean, it wasn't that bad.
We could definitely go into the of how people are more willing to sit through a movie that they paid for.
Right.
Like if you actually go to the movie, you're more willing to put up with garbage because, well, you already spent $300 to see it.
Because that is the going rate of movies these days.
Yeah.
So the flip side of that conversation, the Cecil's point, more specifically, was that the punk in whatever punk was that we're taking a concept and we're messing with that concept, right? Like we're taking like you said, we're taking this information age far future and we're gonna fuck with that and we're gonna tweak that. Something I do kind of agree with is the idea that like steampunk could be punk because the people that make the steampunk stuff, like the people that build their cosplay, are doing it in a very punk way, right? Like they're they're makers at home, like they're doing it in an interesting way. But the thing that always bugged me about the world of steampunk having that moniker on the end was that oftentimes they're like the aristocracy, like the characters in steampunk stories are the nobles because it's Victorian era, but plus, steam powered gadgets. And so you end up with these stories that are all about like aristocrats, but you've got punk tacked on the end, and that just, I don't know, it just didn't sit well with me.
I think you're really, really obsessed with four letters.
Yeah, he's hung up, man.
I mean, I'm not the only one. Like I've read like, there are a lot of people that feel the same way.
This is called what are you trying to what is that? Anyways. Vindicating yourself or whatever, or giving justification to your obsession.
Well, okay, sure, maybe, but I just there's two ways to look at cyberpunk, right? There's the this is an oppressive government, or this is an oppressive regime. This is a story about people fighting against the systems that oppress them. Or this is a story about weird future tech where computers run our lives, right? And oh, cool, look how cool it is that everything's like, look at that jet, and look at these weird Cyberman people, and like there's two different ways to take cyberpunk and go with it, and one keeps the like political side and one doesn't. And when you ditch that political aspect of cyberpunk, it falls flat for me.
Well, if then I have to ask you, do you find Blade Runner cyberpunk?
Yeah, the first one, because it's about, I mean, it's about like the way that our government treats these synths. It's about the fact that they've lied and conditioned certain people. Like the question of whether or not Deckard is a replicant or not, like that.
But I don't find that very fighting authority. That like that.
Well, I mean, spoilers for a 20-year-old movie, but he turns and he goes, like he runs away at the end. Like he does. He rejects authority at the end.
Yeah, but what I mean is that is a 30-second scene, a 2-minute scene out of the whole thing for something
just because our point of view is the tool of the oppressor in that world, it doesn't mean that the themes aren't there. Like the replicants searching for freedom and trying to find out what it means to be human is the punk part of it, right? That's them trying to search for a way to live and be themselves.
And look at the universe, look at the world too. Like clearly that's an issue too. It's not specifically discussed in the movie, but if you just look at the scenes from the street when he's eating, you can kind of look around and get the idea that it's clearly a dystopian time. And I mean, yeah.
But being dystopian doesn't make it cyberpunk in his eye. From his statement, it being against the oppressors is what makes it cyberpunk.
Are we talking about Blade Runner? Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay. When did Blade Runner get? Did somebody say Blade Runner?
I did.
Yeah.
Blade Runner is usually it's
the first
probably the thing that people snap to when they think of cyberpunk.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Well, it's for so long you guys have been talking about, Deckard, and I'm like,
I don't know if you can see.
No. When I said Deckard, when I said Decker, Decker, it's a Shadowrun term for a hacker.
Oh, okay. What am I looking at?
What? Oh no, I have. So there's two books that are sort of like the originators of the cyberpunk genre. There's Snow Crash and Neuromancer are the two that are sort of like the originators of the cyberpunk genre in film, and then Blade Runner is kind of the first movie that really sells it. And then, oh damn it, what's the name of that other one? There's a movie that came out in the 80s before or right around the same time as Blade Runner that also has a lot of I'm gonna let it go because I can't remember the name
Lawnmower
of it.
Man.
Look it up. It's
The
not
Fifth Hour Man.
But yeah, so that is my beef with the use of punk as aesthetic, or as a buzzword to say, this thing we're gonna focus on the clothing, or we're gonna talk about how cool it is that stuff looks a certain way by tacking punk on the end. Like Shadowrun is cyberpunk because you are fighting against, you are a tool of an oppressive society. Like
whereas I say it's Shadowrun cyberpunk because of how the technology works and how it goes that way.
Were you thinking of Videodrome out of curiosity?
Oh no, I'll look it up.
Ultimately, it comes down to you put 10 literary experts into a room, and they're going to have completely different opinions on what they pull from a given work.
Yeah.
So neither answer is wrong, because quite frankly, some people saw Neuromancer and they saw Fight the Man, and some saw the natural order of technology when you take anything to an extreme.
What's Terminator then?
Science fiction.
Yeah,
just science fiction.
Yeah, it's what if we invented robots and gave them authority over our lives? What would happen? I mean, it's a pretty sad view of it. I mean, hell, the Kree in the Marvel universe are the same. Like they follow an AI. An AI runs their society, right? It's what would happen if the Terminator didn't want to make a bunch of baby robots, and instead the AI just ran society and told people what to do. Like it's just science fiction.
Johnny Mnemonic. That is probably one of the clearest, more modern takes
On
Cyberpunk. If you're not gonna go through the argument about Blade Runner, I think Johnny Mnemonic is about as clear as Cyberpunk is going to get cinematically, that it's been done at least yet.
Yeah, for sure. It's
opinions about how good the movie is aside, but
it's an amazing movie.
Well, yeah, I mean, a lot of people have different opinions about it, but it's so very clearly Cyberpunk.
Yeah. Oh,
like so Ryan Batman has question.
Yeah.
Handor, go ahead.
I'd like to hear this one explained.
So Blake Ryan asks, body swapping, i.e., Freaky Friday, is that a genre or a trope?
Well, you know what? I would say even more iconically. What about like? Let's go back to like Tom Hanks and I don't know if he's body.
Well, yeah, that's why I'm saying it's a trope. This is about because it's happening with a new movie right now. Right, I saw the trailer when I went to see the new Jordan Peele movie. Anyway, I saw that they're doing it again. It's officially a trope now. This is the 5th or 6th occurrence of the body swapping genre. But yeah, Freaky Friday 2. But yeah, it's been done more than a handful of times at this point. But I wouldn't say it's a genre.
Shout out to Jordan Peele right now. He's killing it. Just FYI.
I'm waiting on Twilight Zone to watch those.
I would definitely say that's a trope. Like you can base a whole film on a specific trope, but it's like it doesn't. I think the genre definitely has to do with the aesthetic, right? Like it sort of tends to define a time period. It defines a look and feel of a thing, and you could do body switching in anything, right? Like they've done plenty of almost every sci-fi show has a body switching episode.
Yeah, it's happened so many.
Right.
But yeah, I wouldn't say it's.
But yeah, so any other things we want to touch on?
Well, before Gidget stabs us, I will break up her statement, and you're going to have to convey it by proxy.
Sure.
But what is pulp?
Okay, so a lot of people.
That's that shit you get in your orange, right?
So it is that. So pulp is it's a genre of adventure stories. Indiana Jones is probably our best example of pulp in modern cinema.
Love Indiana Jones.
Right? It's so good. But the word pulp comes from the shitty paper that was used in these dime novel adventure stories that were popular in the West and in like the late 1800s, early 1900s. And so the term pulp refers to these shitty. It'd be like saying 4-color comic books, right? When you say 4-color comic books, you know what you're talking about, right?
Mm-hmm.
Pulp just refers to the specific like time period when these adventure stories were printed on really terrible paper, sold for almost nothing, and they were extremely popular all throughout the Western expansion about these big heroes, these, double-fisted adventurers who were going on, and doing Indiana Jones type stuff. And Indiana Jones is ultimately it is our cinematic version of all of those old crappy dime novels.
But I don't hear a genre though. And this is what's confusing me. I don't hear anything in that says this is a genre.
I mean, it definitely conveys when you think of pulp, it's someone who's nigh unkillable, right? Like they almost never die. They are
James Bond.
James Bond is a spy story, though.
Yeah, I know.
But what's the video games recently that came out? Uncharted.
You're thinking Uncharted.
Uncharted is pulp, right?
So you're saying that it's Indiana Jones or Indiana Jones like is the only way to be pulp.
Yes.
What about Tomb Raider?
It's basically a treasure hunting. Like it's an adventure where you're finding out things, you're learning things, you're investigating and unraveling things to discover something or find a thing. Kind of.
I'll be honest, you and Gidge have been talking about pulp for the 10 years I've known you. I still have no clue what you're talking about.
Yeah, and that's why I said it beforehand. I was like, I kind of just go with it, but I've never really understood or been clear on what it meant or what made it a genre or anything.
I feel like it's
more like it's a stylized thing or feeling about the storyline.
I almost wonder if you're right. Like Blake mentions that is pulp something that could be transplanted between genres. The new Mummy, with the Tom Cruise Mummy, definitely pulp, right? Or at least it starts out as a pulp story, right? Like when they're doing the treasure hunting
in the desert and everything.
They're in the
so
desert.
Like Sahara,
they're doing that.
Sahara, no. Sahara has.
So again, I'm hearing treasure
pulp.
hunting as like one of the big archetypes.
It's a good example, right? Like it's these larger than life people who are going to either like exploit a place for its riches, or save the day in a way that is larger than life but not superhuman.
Sure.
I don't know. It's
so with Pulp Fiction. Would that be classified as that? As a pulp?
Or are you going to go on a 20-minute tirade on how they stole pulp?
No, I definitely don't think...
It sounds to me like it's in I mean, obviously it's in the name, it was intended. But it sounds like it's the gritty kind of like these adventures are happening and they're intertwined in all these stories, and it's kind of like that grindhouse kind of thing. Which is probably the cinematic version of pulp novels would be grindhouse films.
Oh, definitely,
so
yeah.
It kind of has that same idea, right? Because I've never understood what pulp meant in Pulp Fiction, but if that's the case, then I have to presume it's like that noir thing.
Concede that is.
You'll know exactly what pulp is when Kurt makes his new pulp punk game setting.
And it's basically just Indiana Jones, but people have mohawks and like leather vests with chains going across.
Oh,
yeah.
Why?
And they have iPhones.
Buy it now on itch.io.
Okay.
Kurtpots.itch.io Pulp Punk
Thanks.
version 1.
Oh my god. I'm not gonna do that.
He's gonna.
You have a game called Bird Secrets. You can make pulp punk.
Yeah, okay, but I don't know. I don't know that the pulp genre and like what I see as the punk side of those punk aesthetics fits, right? Because I don't know.
He's thinking about it.
I will dissect it and find out if they mesh, and see if I think I can mesh them together. Can you have big damn adventurers who are fighting oppression in a way that
Nazis
feels? Well, yeah, I mean,
Nazis are big corporation.
But yeah, like Nazis are a common theme in pulp stories.
Well, they were in Indiana Jones.
Yeah. I think a lot of like hell, most of the like the Mummy, the old Mummy is a very pulp kind of thing. But and it doesn't necessarily have to do with the fact that they're treasure hunters. It has more to do with the fact that like the way that they are they're not superhuman, but they never they never die. Like if you watch The Mummy and you watch Brendan Fraser running around just punching people out windows and firing a shotgun off the back of an A1 or what is it, a Model A, right?
M1 Abrams.
That's pulp.
See, this is confusing the hell out of me.
No,
then what would you call Flash Gordon then? Sci-fi, sci-fantasy, or pulp? Or is it sci-fi pulp or sci-fantasy?
Flash Gordon is a space opera.
Yeah, but
I'm
it
starting
has
to think that Kurt actually doesn't know what pulp means, aside from someone told him that Indiana
But
Jones was pulp.
it
I think everything he just used
does it not fit the criteria? I mean, it's confusing.
But isn't what I don't know. Because
The
doesn't he
characters
have
to be big
superpower?
damn heroes, right? The characters have to be big damn heroes, but they have.
Flash Gordon is totally that way. He is the big masculine.
Flash Gordon is
super
certainly
kick,
pulp. Okay,
run and punch.
So,
But
all
doesn't Flash Gordon have superpower?
I'll tell
No.
you this: if it runs well
Oh,
in
okay.
Savage Worlds, it's a pulp story. If it feels right in Savage Worlds,
That's
it's
it.
pulp. If it doesn't
It's
feel
gotta
right
be
in
pulp.
Savage Worlds, it wasn't pulp. Because
That's
Savage
our barrier.
Worlds runs pulp
That's
games.
our barrier of entry to define pulp. Is does it fit in Savage
Can
Worlds?
you play it in Savage Worlds?
I am not going to call pulp a genre. Then I'm going to call pulp a style of writing, a kind of a theme, or
Well, you know what, and that only continues to go along with what Kurt said in the beginning, which is it derives from that Western writing novel book, the little whatever they were called. It goes
dime
back
novels?
to that. It just loops back onto that.
I do love that setting though. I love that whole thing. I love the treasure hunting and the larger than life character that just kind of defies reality, but it's not. They're not a superhero. It just they always find that way. They always have a way to get out of the situation.
What Western was it that I swear they did? The guy followed him around. I feel like Owen Wilson or something was in it or something, and he had it was no. You know what it was? It was the movie with Owen Wilson and Jackie Chan, and the guy writes all these
Around the World in 80 Days or Shanghai Noon.
I think it was Shanghai Noon, and he has this author write all these big books about himself that obviously never happened. It was the same.
Those stories were probably pulp novels.
Yeah, absolutely. They absolutely were.
Those stories in fiction in Shanghai Noon were pulp novels. Crushed it.
Big Trouble Little China.
That seems like Big Trouble Little China is a very pulpy story, right? Like there's
That's an awesome movie.
Like having fantasy in a thing does not exclude it from being pulp.
Yeah.
Yeah. But all right, that feels like a good place as any to call it. Do we have any?
Is
final
everyone
thoughts?
confused more than they were, or less confused?
I hope
than they were
so.
before?
I think the idea being is that Gidget should watch this, and then we'll give her 10 minutes to tell us why we're all dumb and didn't get the point.
By the way, if we were to come back to be like, hey, that guy that really gave us the bad review, we want you to watch this episode specifically and re-review us. See if we nailed that.
This is not their thing. This is not going to work for them.
He would love this one.
Do we have any final thoughts on genres and tropes? We didn't hit a
same
lot of
as
tropes.
I had before. It's largely subjective. It's largely subjective of your experiences with each of these genres, and I think it's a lot of time has to do with a feeling, and I don't think it's always necessarily something you could say you're wrong. I mean, obviously, if you tell me that, a Western is sci-fi with nothing sci-fi, obviously you're wrong. But if there's sci-fi aspects
Cowboys
to it,
versus aliens.
Cowboys and aliens.
that's what I'm saying. If it has that kind of aspects to
it was bad.
it,
So bad.
then it opens
sad all
up
the way through it,
doors
though.
for interpretation. And I don't think you can really say anyone's wrong. It's subjective.
Yeah.
I totally agree. So I think the big thing to remember is if someone is mad at you because you said something is something they don't think it is, just let it go. Or
I'm in the wrong
and
spot.
If you're mad, just let it go. Don't fight about it because it's
Let it go. Let it go.
And with that, I think we're going to close out here. So, Kurt,
Why
where
am I
can
in the
people
wrong
find
spot?
us?
Thanks, Nightson. People can find us all over the internet. They can head to pixelscandal.com to find back episodes of this show or to find links to our social media where we're at Pixel Scandal on Twitter and Instagram or Pixel Scandal Show on Facebook. They can find links to our YouTube and our Twitch where you can either watch the show live or find past episodes. And they can find links to our audio feed in iTunes, in Spotify, or any pod receptacle of your choice. And of course, if they want to support this show, they can find links to our Patreon where we have some cool backer rewards. So if you want to become a backer, you can jump in there. You can get some...
Jump in on it.
Yeah, you can get recaps of our actual plays. And of course, you can ask us to like review games and stuff like that. And then if you want, you can sub to our Twitch channel from there as well. So that's all the places people can find us on the internet.
All right.
I want to say real quick before we go out. I went through and watched Cobra Kai and gave that a chance. I don't know if you guys have watched that, the YouTube originals. Yeah, it's really good. It's actually really good.
I thought you were going to tell me it was Cyberpunk.
Nope.
Just to mess with
I wasn't going to do that. No, but just wanted to throw it out there real quick. Forgot that I watched it. I'm excited about it. I'm excited.
Pretty sure it's pulp, though.
It's definitely Victorian fantasy. All right.
Pulp
Thanks,
punk.
everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Well.
Bye.
Bye.
Love you.